I am Sarah O'Daniel, Marketing Specialist at Scenic Regional Library, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Miss Susan Marie Frontczak. She is a living history storyteller and the presenter for our final program of the 2022 Community Read, in which we're reading Frankenstein. The title of the program is Meet Mary Shelley, which will be held on Saturday, April 30th at 7 p.m. at the East Central College Theater. Hello, Susan Marie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
So tell me a little bit about living history and how did you begin performing it?
Living history, especially in this format where I will be presenting in character, then answering questions in character before I step out of character to answer other questions about Mary Shelley. I learned about this a little over 20 years ago. They call it Chautauqua, and it harkens back to the time that people would gather under a big tent to listen to the real historical figures, Mark Twain, William Jennings Bryan, Clara Barton, and have a chance to have a conversation with them after they give their presentation. But this is a recreation that started in the 1970s, where a scholarly portrayal tries to represent someone out of history that we don't have a chance to meet in person. I got started I began researching in 1999 and began presenting 2001 as Marie Curie. She was my first character, but Mary Shelley was my second.
So what made you choose Mary Shelley as one of your characters?
Well, let's see. If I could back up to Marie Curie being my first, and I actually developed a program first person as her prior to knowing about the Chautauqua format, and then it fit. But I developed her in part because I have a background in science and because I have a Polish background. Frontczak is a Polish name. So she was a natural fit for me. But some librarians who had seen my Marie Curie program had been to a national conference and found out about a nationally traveling exhibit on Frankenstein, where a third of it is about all the cultural references we have to Frankenstein, all the way up through the monsters and Frankenstein cereal and everything else. And a third of it was on the biomedical applications that are implied by what Mary Shelley had Victor Frankenstein develop in creating his creature. But the third was about the life of Mary Shelley. And in order to bring this nationally traveling exhibit to their respective towns, they invited me to develop Mary Shelley, which I ended up then doing at some of the other places this exhibit traveled around the country. So it was by invitation.
So from some of the research I've done, Mary Shelley was a very interesting human. What do you find most fascinating about her, and what do you wish more people knew?
I remember early on when I was developing the program, an author that I respect asked me, well, what is it about Frankenstein that reflects Mary Shelley? It's this science fiction story. The main characters are all male. There is the fiance, but she's not quite window dressing, but she doesn't take part in the main action of the show. So what is it that Mary Shelley put of herself into this? And I learned through researching her the degree to which she was, how women were marginalized at the time, how lower classes were marginalized, because she was a commoner and she had this liaison and then marriage with an aristocrat, perceived as Shelley. And especially in the particulars of her own life, she felt abandoned at some places and very much alone. So I think there's a message in Frankenstein that reflects on her own life and her sympathy for those who feel on the outside.
So Meet Mary Shelley is not the only program that you'll be presenting. You will also be presenting Grappling with the Monster, which is a discussion exploring what is possible today and the medical ethics of it all. What made you start offering that particular presentation, and what is society's responsibility when it comes to medical ethics?
There are Chautauqua events held around the country. And when one presents in character in a community, often there's a theme, and there'll be somewhere between 3 and 8 presenters through a week presenting their own characters. we are expected to do some daytime workshops that give some more background or another angle on the character, but those are presented out of character. So I designed this workshop so that we could talk about all the different things you can do today that either prolong life or improve life in some medical way. And there are ties to what you'd have to be able to do to create the creature, such as Victor Frankenstein did. So then there's a question of, if you can do this, should you? We will discuss quite a spectrum. And one of the things I want to have us all embrace is that people are going to find themselves in different places on that spectrum in terms of what they feel is, of course, what they feel is maybe all right under certain circumstances and what you maybe shouldn't do, but people will live in different places along that spectrum. And how do we learn to work together in our world that we share when we bring different opinions to that? And how do we resolve if we don't agree?
Lastly, why is Frankenstein still relevant and why are people still reading it today?
I think there are two big reasons. I won't say there are only two, but I think there are two really big reasons. One is this biomedical ethics issue. If you can do something medically, should we? Or what laws or controls or restraint or morals should we apply to that decision? The other is that sense of the abandoned members of society, people who, through no fault of their own, are dealt a hand when they're born that makes their lives a whole lot harder than for others. But what responsibility, if any, does society, do we as a people have toward either abandoned members of society or toward making some of these moral, biological, medical guidelines? So I think those are the two biggies that you read the book. It's just fascinating to think about what if you could, and what are the implications of that?
Thank you so much for joining us here today. Like I said, Susan Marie Frontczak will be presenting Meet Mary Shelley on Saturday, April 30th at 7 p.m. at the East Central College Theater. She will also be presenting Grappling with the Monster Friday, April 29th at 6 p.m. at the Union Branch. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.